Welcome everyone to Outer Voices Movie Reviews. This is your host, Keem. So, one of the side projects I wanted to do was start doing movie reviews because I go to movies a lot and I have a lot to talk about movies. I'm a bit of a movie snob. I'm not your hoity-toity I've gone to film school snob, but I am a bit of a movie watcher. And it's an excuse for me to watch more movies and review them. So, this is the first episode of Outer Voices Movie Reviews. And to start off with on this episode, this first premiere episode, I'm going to talk about a movie I seen over the weekend that had a effect on me. And that movie was Spike Lee's BlacKKKlansman, stylized BlacKKKlansman, which is the story of a Colorado Springs police officer who infiltrated the local chapter of the Ku Klux Klan, and the story around that. So, before I go into spoilers, I'm going to give a quick no-spoiler review. So, first of all, I'll go with a whatever out of 10 ranking. All right, easy enough. So, I will honestly give it a 7 out of 10 on its own. 7 out of 10 on its own. It's good. It's not spectacular. It's not great. It is good on its own. However, with our current political climate, it gets bumped up to a 7.5 or an 8. Honestly, this movie, like I said, it's good, but it's only more powerful because of the political climate we have in this country right now. This movie was made for what's happening right now, using a story from, I think it was the 70s or 80s. I think it was the 70s. Using a story from the 70s to really highlight what's going on in our society right now. So, honestly, get ready to be angry. And if you're not angry, something's wrong. If you're not angry by the time you walk out of there, then you've missed the point. Or either you've missed the point, or you weren't going there you weren't going into that theater with a proper mindset to watch that movie. You probably shouldn't have watched the movie in the first place. If you're not angry, you probably shouldn't have gone in the first place. This is the first movie in a while that pushed me to an audible outburst, which doesn't happen very often. I am, when it comes especially theater movies, I am a very quiet, focused person to spot different nuances in the movie. However, at the end, there was something in the movie that made me that really made me have an outburst, which I am not proud of having an outburst, but I applaud the movie for getting that response. So, we'll talk about performances. First of all, John David Washington, which I didn't know is Denzel Washington's son, plays the main character, Ron Stallworth, which he does a good job. You can tell this movie's a black comedy, of course, with political underpinnings, but his portrayal of Stallworth it's good, albeit cartoonish. At times, his accent is cartoonish. Some of his mannerisms are cartoonish, which, coming from Spike Lee, every one of Spike Lee's characters is exaggerated, which I'm going to speak to later. But it was exaggerated, and of course, like I said, this is Spike Lee's style. It felt weird, but I guess with the black comedy stylings, it worked. John David Washington did a good job. Like I said, he did good with what he was given. Adam Driver did good. Adam Driver did was what is to be expected of him. Adam Driver has always been good in just about every role I've seen him in. I've never watched a movie with Adam Driver in it that I wasn't just like, you did good. Even Kylo Ren in Star Wars, like, that's like, the reason people hate Kylo is because he does a very good job at portraying Kylo. He does a good job in this movie portraying Flip Zimmerman. In the movie, Zimmerman is the other half of Ron Stallworth. He is the passing white cop. He's not actually white. He's Jewish. But he's the passing white cop, or half Jewish. He's the passing white cop who actually does the, like, face-to-face with the Klan in the area, while Stallworth does the phone liaisons. And he does a very good job, like, playing the conflicted passing character who, like, is kind of forced to not acknowledge his own heritage, his own ethnicity, and the part he plays in this whole big racial divide we have in the U.S. I think it was great. Laura Harrier was Patrice, the love interest of the movie, and the president of the Black Student Union in the town. And once again, she did good for her part, but her role was pretty stereotypical. She's your soul sister, black militant, whatever. She's less of a character, more of a character archetype. She was really just there to get a point across. And once again, that's on the director and the writer. That's not on the actor. The actor did great. She did great in her role, but her role was basically a character archetype. I'm trying to think. Topher Grace, I think, for me, hands down, Topher Grace was the most entertaining character when he was on screen. He isn't on screen much. He is the character that I think fit the most. He plays David Duke, and Topher Grace creepily, like, looks very much like a young David Duke. It is the resemblance is uncanny. He encapsulated why David Duke was so appealing, because David Duke put on this clean cut, stereotypically like white, waspy, male American persona to draw people into openly being part of the Klan, to try to raise the Klan's public persona to make them more acceptable, more mainstream. And Topher Grace really pulls that off. He really pulls off the sinister, clean cut, and not sinister in a, like, oh, he's creepy, but sinister as in he's delightful. He's somebody you could probably talk to, who would talk to you, but he's secretly trying to destroy you. He's secretly trying to do all these horrible things, and Topher Grace really pulls that off. Another character I think was done really well, even if not also kind of cartoonish, was Jasper Pocketon, who plays Felix, who's this hothead at the local Klan, and he's really the protagonist. I mean, not protagonist. Apologize. He's really the antagonist of the movie. Once again, Spike Lee is very cartoonish with his characters. It doesn't feel very real. It feels like a stereotype. But he played good in a stereotype. He makes you hate him with that stereotype, which is good. But once again, it's a stereotype. Like I said, the actors did good with what they got. And there were some other, like, good roles that everyone played what they were given as well as they could. Which brings me to my primary complaint about the movie itself, without spoiling it. My primary complaint with the movie itself, and it's honestly, I will go ahead and I will admit this now. As a black person, it's can be hard to make. Cause Spike Lee is one of those legendary black directors. Spike Lee has a place in black history as was one of the legendary black directors. I'm not, and I've watched many, many, many Spike Lee movies. I'm not a big fan of Spike Lee movies, and I can say that now because I realized why I don't like Spike Lee movies that much, and it's because Spike Lee is extraordinarily heavy-handed. Spike Lee doesn't tell real stories. Spike Lee doesn't tell believable stories. Spike Lee takes a message that he wants to portray and he hits you over the head with it. There's no subtlety. There's no nuance. There is the message and you take it. And many, many, many times in this movie, the characters flat out say what the director wants the movie to say. You can't have your characters literally just say the message of the movie in the movie. It's you treating the audience like they're idiots. And I get it. He's trying to, what Spike Lee has been trying to do is go, hey, this is the experience of black Americans. This is the experience of this part of the country and how they experience stuff. And he's trying to tell this to a mainstream audience. He's basically trying to tell this to white people who don't get it. And trying to explain it in the simplest way he can to basically what he views as a simple audience. But most audiences aren't simple. You can't talk. It's like he's talking down to the watcher. It's like he's talking like to a child. He makes characters very stereotypical. He makes their dialogue, their lines, very stereotypical and cartoony. The dialogue in this movie, at point, hurts, but not because of like the impact of it, but because it's too ham-fisted. Like you shouldn't say things. You should let the audience get things. You should build background. But Spike Lee doesn't do that. He just have characters blurt out thing. It's like for those of you who've seen the Do the Right Thing, and Radiohead just yells "Wake up." You go. That seems like, oh yeah, it's a message. It's the message of the movie. And it's like, it's so profound. It's not. Because you don't have to have a character yell that message. In this movie, they have the characters yell the message. I don't like being talked down to by the movies. I know other people don't like to be talked down to by the movie. And that really hurts Spike Lee as a director. Spike Lee needs to learn nuance. And if it wasn't for the message of the movie, this movie would not have been what it was. It would not have been worth a watch. So, like I said, I give the movie a 7.5 out of 10. 7 out of 10, amplified to a 7.5 or 7.8 just because of the political climate. That is my spoiler-free review. Now, getting into spoilers about the story. If you haven't seen it and want to see it after my spoiler-free, stop right here, go see it, and then come back and tell me if you agree. However, those who aren't going to see it have already seen it. Here's where you start. So the movie starts off with Ron Stallworth, John David Washington's character, who joins the Colorado Springs Police Force. He's the first black officer because of course he is. He's basically token, and they do very good with the opening up of setting the character of what he is. He is, for lack of a better word, a sellout. He is your, as black community would call him, he's your quote unquote coon. Like, he just wants to be a good cop, and they come in and they ask him, they're asking him all these questions, like, how would you react if another officer called you a nigger? Because they don't want him to overreact. They don't want him to be basically act like a black person. They want him to be the example, the token. So this is the role he settles in. And you start to see him, like, he starts working in the records room. Of course, he starts working at the bottom because they're not going to give a black cop this prominent role, even though he's the first. They got him working in the records room. He starts having like brushing up against this other officer who's obviously the like side racist antagonist of the movie, who is going to give him gruff at work. And all this stuff. Very, very typical movie like this. Very typical Spike Lee. He goes and requests that he goes undercover or become part of the undercover unit, and eventually they assign him to go undercover with the local black student union, who has brought in Kwame Ture, aka Stokely Carmichael, to speak. And they're like, oh, this is going to be subversive. They're going to start a race war and all this stuff. They're going to get the local blacks all riled up, and I want you to go undercover. You meet some of the other members of the undercover unit, and they're portrayed as not sinister police officers, but cops that just want to do their job. Cops that are willing to ignore what is happening to do their job, which speaks to some things that I'll get into later. And one of those officers is Flip Zimmerman, who will become very important in the story later. But he goes, Starworth goes undercover, meets Patrice, sparks a little love interest, and she's the president of the Black Student Union. He records Ture's speech, which does get very heated, but it's nothing, whatever. Later on, he goes out to for drinks with Patrice, learns that her and the envoy taking Ture back to the airport gets stopped by the racist cop he had brushed with earlier, who proceeded to just harass them, and for lack of a better word, there wasn't any penetration. It was certainly sexual assault, and sexually assaults her and the other black women involved, and which, that all that once, of course, which was was going to happen. It's a very easy plot point. But he starts to build this relationship with her. He gets questioned by the police chief about what happened, and he's, after hearing Ture's speech, and he's just like, yeah, it was fiery rhetoric, but that's all it was. It was rhetoric. And they're not going to start a race war. Like, they're not going to start fighting or whatever. It's just something to make them feel better about what's happening, which speaks to something for me as a black person. It speaks to something very interesting in the community, and that is, black people have a lot of rhetoric about, the revolution and fighting back against our oppressors, and, even taking up arms against our oppressors. But that's not something we want to do. Not even that we want to do. We want to do it, but it's not something that we're going to do. We're not going to start a race war. We're not going to go out and attack white people. It's not going to happen. It's never going to happen. And it's not going to happen because that is not how we were taught. It's not it's not the conditioning that we have. We are conditioned to stay in our place. Unfortunately, in society, we are the lowest in the society. We're conditioned to stay in our place. We're conditioned to be quote unquote respectful, which means not being violent against white people. Now, we're not being violent against white people, which is all kinds of fucked up. not protesting too hard, not heavily, and doing all this being peaceful and quote unquote. We are taught to play the politics of respectability. So when white groups, especially like mainstream white groups, hear this fiery rhetoric, and they go, look at them, those black people being violent, and they're planning this and bang that, and we should be scared. No, it's comfort. It's cold comfort, but it's comfort because we've been beaten so long. And I think this movie inadvertently highlights that. I don't think it means to. I don't think it's part of their message. Part of the message of the movie, but it inadvertently highlights that. It inadvertently highlights the rhetoric versus action, the rhetoric versus what's going to happen, what we want to be, the freedom we want to have, the revolution we want to have, versus the brainwashing, the place, the conditioning that we've been putting in this society. So that, like, once again, that's just my side note, but I think that's a highlight there. Some people should think about. Especially in current times where, honestly, you need to be more fired up. Like, we need to be fired up. Need to be ready for self-defense if necessary. You know, we should think about how politics of respectability play in our conditioning. How the push for peaceful protest plays in our conditioning. But that's just my side story. That's my side piece. But he goes and he ends up part of the investigation and undercover unit. Starworth does. And he sees an advertisement for the local Klan, and he calls. And he starts to become ingrained in communicating with the local Klan leader under his real name, which is, of course, not very smart for a police officer, but I guess they're playing he's young and dumb rookie, whatever. And he eventually convinces the police chief that they should investigate the local chapter of the Klan, using Flip Zimmerman as a proxy because he looks white. He passes. There's a funny not a funny exchange, but there's a telling exchange between the chief and Starworth, because the chief at first doesn't believe Starworth they can pull it off, because he says white people will be able to tell that they're talking to a black person. And we've heard you hear this all the time. You hear this all the time in real life, that you can hear the difference between a black person and a white person. It's just the way they speak. We sound different. We speak differently. There is vernacular in some black communities. There's African American vernacular English, whatever. But that talking difference is not always the case. There is, other than community stuff, there is no racial difference between, like, the sound of people's voice. And it's just a racist stereotype that it is, which this movie highlights, I think, twice. I think David Duke says it later in the movie as well, that he could tell if he's talking to a N-word because of the way their voice sounds, and the fact, and this is kind of funny, that he says that black people don't say R, because white people say R, but black people say aura, which that happens in the South some. I have family members who say aura, but that's not a fucking thing. Anyway, so he gets to go undercover, talking back and forth. They meet the local Klan leader, him, the combined Starworth brothers, Zimmerman and Starworth. They, ingrain themselves in the local Klan. They meet the local leader, who is generally more like clean cut, but he's still kind of rednecky. And you meet this other just fucking dumbass character, and I'm going to talk about their portrayal in a moment. But this character was so he was comic relief, but it was was bad. Like it was a bad character. Just this, for lack of a better word, like portrayed as like stereotypically fat, stupid. It was ridiculous. And I think most importantly, out of this group, he meets Felix, and Felix is your staunch, vehement. The race war is coming. We gotta protect the white America by force. Terrorist motherfucker. You know, he is what you hear, like when you stereotypically think Klan. This is what you get. And he is, like I said, he is the main antagonist of the movie. Eventually, you find out that he's planning on bombing an event later. That, unbeknownst to the some of the other members of the Klan, mostly the local leader, that is happening. You also meet Felix's wife, who plays this like saccharine, sweet, lives only to serve white woman who really wants to get involved and stick it to the N-words to please her husband, who treats her like shit, of course. But she also highlights white women's complicity in white supremacy. She puts on airs, but she's just a part of it just as much as anyone else. And she wants to be. She wants to be in that role, that subservient role to her husband. She wants to be a part of all his bullshit. She's literally begs to be a part of all his bullshit, which once again highlights white women's role in this, because white women aren't like as much as like people want to do, like people want to say with the women's march. You can look at demographics. You can see how many white women voted for Trump in the past election. You can see how the white vote sways. White women play a role in white supremacy, play a major role in white supremacy. And once again, this movie highlights it. One major issue with the portrayal of the Klan members in this movie, especially the local members, is that while they are sinister, they're stupid. They're rednecks. They're good old boys. They're inept, which once again is a very stereotypical view of the Klan. And it's one that paints the picture that mostly just rednecks are the Klan, just poor, stupid people, and it's not the case. Anybody can be a Klan member. Most of the time they are. The Klan makes money like that. They have very prominent, rich people that you're not going to be able to tell they're in the Klan. They're not going to call you the N-word. They're not going to stalk your house. They're not going to do any of that stuff. You know, they're not going to be planning bombings and armed uprisings. No, they're not going to do that. That's your major Klan members. Like, it's not these dumb rednecks. These dumb rednecks are usually racist on their own, when they are. But your major Klan members, your ones that are doing the most damage, are going to be your clean-cut, upper class, middle class people who are going to smile in your face out in public. They're going to talk really good about their black coworkers and whatever while they're out in front of people and put on airs. And then when they go home, that's when everything boils down to it. And I didn't like the portrayal in this movie because it relies heavily on the old Klan stereotypes, which doesn't prepare people for what the Klan actually is. Most Klan members are more situated closer to David Duke, who is clean cut. But even Duke, in the movie, is very prominently racist. Even though he's bringing the Klan, his whole job is to bring the Klan mainstream appeal. Most actual Klan members, you will never know. And I will say they refer to the Klan as the organization, the secret empire. That's what it always was. Even the public face of the Klan doesn't highlight the secret empire. It's not the ones you see that you should be worried about. It's the ones you don't. Which the movie does good in that, but with the rest, it's like I said, very stereotypical. So as things go on, Stallworth and Zimmerman become more ingrained. They learn that there were soldiers working at NORAD, which is our military's like special weapons branch, that were in the Klan, that was there, which got sent to FBI, and the FBI took care of it. You deal with Zimmerman, who now has to confront his Jewishness because he hasn't had to confront it before, because he's always passed and run like schools him on passing. And you have Zimmerman go through this thing about him passing. I wish they would have made Zimmerman, while they do that, they don't go into that deep enough. They don't let Zimmerman examine his own complicity in the things that have been going on in his department, within the police department, with racism, and the treatment of black people. They get, like I said, they touch on him passing and having to touch on his Jewishness and his own part in the fight, because the Klan hates him as well. There's multiple things where Felix is trying to expose him as a Jew, but they don't let Flip become fully introspective. They don't let Flip acknowledge, like, hey, the people around me in this police department are shitty. He doesn't even openly embrace his Jewish heritage. He still passes at the end. So, once again, Flip is very unrealized. Ron is also super problematic because Ron also hides his job from Patrice, because he doesn't want her to know he's an undercover cop. And Ron even starts to evolve from quote unquote coon to someone who, cares about the black cause and all this stuff over the working of the investigation. But Ron still isn't a very good character. He's a liar. He's not a good guy. He's the protagonist. He's not a good guy. He doesn't really do the right thing in particular. So yeah, that's big problems. But he talks to David Duke, and throughout the movie he becomes ingrained in David Duke. David Duke comes to town, and they're planning this like armed uprising when Duke comes to town, but then they call it off, and then they go with Plan B, which is try to blow up a thing from the Black Student Union, who has brought this older lynch survivor, played by, I think it's Harry Belafonte, in. And there's a nice juxtaposition of this during that scene. I think it's one of the heaviest hitting scenes that's written. It's David Duke going through this ceremony of indoctrinating Klan members, and all this stuff, and all this stuff, and it's very religious looking, and it's very hateful, but it's played very religiously, and it's juxtaposed with this lynching survivor telling about how the Klan lynched his friend, and how it was a town event, and how it was just this horrible thing, but white people loved it. They loved it. They celebrated it. And it highlighted the difference between what someone says when they say black power versus someone says when they say white power. Because with black power, it's all about the hurt. It's about maintaining in the face of prejudice, maintaining in the face of horror. It's maintaining in the face of everything that has happened to us and everything that continues to happen to us. It's maintaining in the face of being murdered. It's maintaining in the space of being oppressed. While white power is a celebration of hate. It's pulling strength to feel better about yourself, only to hurt others, only to belittle others, only to oppress, to hurt. It's not about pride in who you are. It's about showing that you're more powerful than other people. And that's once again, that's a message in the movie that I don't think is shown enough as compared to the other messages in the movie. But they go through this whole thing. Felix's wife tries to plant a bomb at the house at the car of Patrice. Through a whole thing, Ron tries to stop it, but these other officers don't realize he's a black officer, like he's an undercover officer. They beat him and try to arrest him. Flip comes in and it's like he's a police officer and blah blah blah, let him go. Because you have to have a white savior. Even in this movie, you have to have a white savior. And the bomb blows up, but it kills Felix and his compatriots instead. Blah blah blah, and that's where that story ends. That wraps up. They then set up a sting using Ron and Patrice, because Ron has now revealed that he's a cop to Patrice, and they had a falling out. But after he saved her life, she helped them out. They set up a sting to catch the other racist officer, and all the other cops in the department view Ron as a hero because only that one cop was racist, apparently. And then that's where the portrayal of the cops is what is my major point of contention. Besides the ham-fisted messages of the movie, my first major point of contention is the portrayal of police. Now, with that, I will preface this by saying every individual police officer isn't a bad person. When someone says fuck the police, they don't not mean fuck every one of you police officers in general. They're like in specificity. When people say police are bad, we're not saying that every police officer is a horrible person. We're saying the way policing is done, policing in America is bad. It leads to corruption. It is a white supremacist system. And people that are involved in it are, whether they like it or not, involved in said system. Now, I am okay. I am very okay with portraying police officers, like some police officers, as good police officers, because there are police officers that are good. There at every police precinct has more than one police officer that is a good person who is trying to do what they think is right. However, the policing structure is not right. And you have to keep that in mind. On both sides. You keep in mind that, hey, the policing structure is bad. That doesn't mean every officer is bad. However, this movie does the opposite. It says that most officers, the policing structure isn't bad. It has some bad things, but it isn't bad. And most officers aren't bad. It's only one or two bad eggs that spoil the bunch. That's not the case here, okay? The very fact of the matter is, the quote-unquote good cops in this movie, quote-unquote, were complicit in the racist policing of their officers. They let it happen. They didn't say anything because, quote-unquote, as it said in the movie, we stick together, we're a family. They put the policing over right and wrong. But they are portrayed as being inherently good. And that's not okay. Like, that's not a portrayal that you can portray in this type of movie. You can't, and they don't get to say, like, you don't get to, at the end of the movie, go, it's okay that they were complicit in it because they came back around and now the whole department got rid of this one guy and everybody's fine with Star Wars. That's bullshit. That's not how that works. Even if they would have got rid of that one troublemaker, that doesn't fix the problematic things that were going on and are going on and still is going on in the department. Even after they catch that racist guy, the racist officer, they get rid of Star Wars' entire investigation. They sweep it under the rug. And they literally have a moment of anger before it's just back to normal. The department itself, the policing, is racist, is white supremacist. They knew it and they kept it going, but they don't focus on that. They still let these officers go about their businesses as they're just being good officers. They're just doing their jobs. Their jobs are racist. Ron comes in under racism. This whole entire thing kicks off because their policing is racist. And their officers are complicit. But Spike Lee still portrays these officers as heroes. As they did it. They're the heroes of the story. They're the good guys. They're not good guys. Even Starworth is not a good guy. But once again, that's the issue. That's an issue with Spike Lee. Spike Lee is all black and white. He has no nuance. He has no subtlety. He has no it's not complicated with Spike Lee. He can't write complicated characters. He can't write complicated narratives. So when you have something that needs to be handled in a complicated manner, he can't do it, which makes everything fall flat. Spike Lee does not examine policing. He doesn't. He doesn't examine the problems. He doesn't dig into Starworth. He doesn't dig into this Colorado Springs. There are so many things that are lacking that he fucks up that it makes it really just not good. Like that portion of it not good. Which goes to my biggest gripe of all with the ham-fisted messages that I've talked about. This movie, what it's really about is the fact that America has let open white supremacy win. That we have let the Klan and what it has always done, the fear it has spread, the fervent message that it has spread, we have let it win openly. It is always won. It is always won in private. Systemically and systematically, it has always been the primary, like everything. This is America. It's white supremacy. But we have let it win openly, and we're not doing anything about it. And it constantly reminds you that America first is a Klan slogan that Trump and the Trump administration uses constantly. That Make America Great Again was also a Klan slogan that the Trump administration uses constantly. Like the message is we have let them win. And there is no victory. And I will say the movie does eventually it comes down to there is no victory. You can make small inlays against them. It even runs story. It's a small inlay against white supremacy, but it didn't win. It was not a victory. Like it was a Pyrrhic victory at best. You didn't win. You didn't make that much of an impact. And you have to do more. That's the message of the movie, but it's so just says it in your face. And the movie, when you get that message, when you hear America first, when you hear Make America Great Again, the movie almost pauses. It almost just stops, and the characters almost like break the fourth wall and like wink at you, like, "Hey, you know what this is? Trump." And I get it. Like, this is something you need to, like, this is the message of the movie. But don't tell me, like, hey, message. If any of you seen Don't Be a Menace to Society while drinking your juice in the hood. where like there's a character that always pop when they say something profound, they jump up and say message. This is basically what happened, but this is a serious movie. Like, you can't do that. So it puts this like heavy fog over the movie, like when it's ham-fisted like that. But with that being said about the message, it's a very powerful one. It's a very strong message because it's very true, and it's pushed it even further. And this is what caused the audible outburst. At the end of the movie, Patrice is trying to get Starworth to quit the force because of everything, and he doesn't want to quit because he wants to be a cop. He's always wanted to be a cop, and with being a cop, I think there's some goodness in the idea of wanting to go out and protect the people of your community. And years ago, we got the narrative that that's what police do. They go out and protect people. But that's not the case. And we know that's not the case now. But some people still have that dream of, I want to be a police officer to protect my community. And I don't know how to approach that. I can't say that dream is not something, because you may want to go out and do the right thing. Like, you may want to change things from the inside, and I commend you for it. I commend you for wanting to change, wanting to do good, but I don't know how well that's going to be in the system, how the system works. I don't know how successful you're going to be, but I commend people for who want to try. With that being said, he's like wanting to stay a police officer. She's trying to get him to quit because she can't be involved with somebody who works for the police. And I have a problem with Patrice's character too, that she deals in absolutes, and she deals in very much in absolutes, and she's unwavering and all this stuff and all that doesn't produce good results. That doesn't, like, it's not a helpful way of doing things. It's not a helpful way of being. She's portrayed as she's a very strong character. However, I don't like. She's not a character that will be effective, unfortunately, because she's portrayed as completely uncompromising and unable to listen. That's like, there's a point in the movie where he like reveals that, hey, I've infiltrated the Klan and they're going to hurt people. Like, they're targeting you, and all she can say is, "Oh, you're a cop. Oh, you were undercover when we first met. I'm not going to listen to you." When someone is saying I have been undercover, there's a threat against your life, they are going to do something today, you are not going to go, well, fuck you, because you lied to me. I'm going to continue doing what I'm going to do anyway. I don't care what threat is being made against me. You're going to go, okay, well, fuck you for lying to me, but if there's a credible threat, we need to listen to it and rethink how we're going to operate today. So, like I said, have problems with Patrice's character, along with everyone else's character. But back to the message. It's a very strong message, and that's what gets this audible outburst. So, like I said, they're doing all this Starworth and Patrice are doing this conversation table. They hear something outside, and lo and behold, the rest of the Klan members are bringing a cross on early on. And that's where the movie itself ends. Here's what got me. After the movie ended, they put up the speeches from Trump post-Charlottesville, David Duke post-Charlottesville. They ran footage from Charlottesville and the Unite the Right rally to show that basically we've lost, to that white supremacy is loud and in your face and in the White House and in power, and we have to stand up and fight it. And they showed the moment when that racist fucker who plowed his car into the crowd of counter protesters and killed those people. And that's when I walked out of the theater. Beforehand, I already said fuck this nonsense when they were doing the speeches from Trump, because fuck that nonsense. And the bad people on both sides and races on both sides bullshit. But when it came down to them using the visual of those people getting killed and being hurt by these fuckers, that broke me. I had to get out. I had to leave the theater because I was on the verge of an actual violent outburst. And that is both a good thing and a bad thing. The good thing is that movie was able to invoke that response because of how powerful it was. How powerful that message was. But it's a bad thing, of course, because one, it exists, and this is the world we live in right now. And two, it's certainly ham-fisted and opportunistic the way it was used, which is not great filmmaking. And three, when I walked out of there, I didn't know what to do with my anger at the time. I didn't know what to do with. I didn't know how to direct it. I was, like I said, I was angry. I was angry to the point where I wanted to hit something. I wanted to hit someone. If I would have walked, and this is in Tennessee at the time. If I would have walked out and saw somebody in a MAGA hat, I would have punched them in the face repeatedly without thinking. And I would have enjoyed it. I would have enjoyed every minute of it, every second of it. And I would have gone to jail, but I would have enjoyed it. And so I didn't know what to do with this anger. I still don't know what to do with the anger. So it's going to invoke a response, which is, it's always good that a movie invokes a emotional response, but this is a response that many people are not going to know what to do with. It's a very true response. It's a very powerful response. People are not going to know what to do with it. So I think that's really about it for this movie. Like I said, it's a very, 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 very problematic movie. Problematic in message because, like I said, it's a problematic message, a powerful but problematic message. It's problematic with characters. It's problematic with portrayals of police. I will say I would like to highlight there is a brief opening cameo basically by Alec Baldwin, which it's always good to see Alec Baldwin. Alec Baldwin is one of those people on screen. It's like, I like you, Alec Baldwin, on screen. He's probably a shitty person in real life, but on screen, I like you, Alec Baldwin. Also, I want to highlight a very emotional performance. It's very brief. It's just a speech. It's just a speech about a lynching, but I think it was from Harry Belafonte. And Harry Belafonte is still one of the greatest actors ever. Like, people don't give him enough credit. Harry Belafonte is incredible. And his story, his telling of seeing a lynching is so, it's the realest feeling thing in this movie. It is. It hits you right there, and it very much highlights the horror of lynchings. And it highlights just how ingrained white supremacy is in our country. Because it gives a reminder that, man, Trump is definitely not the first person to be very clearly on the side of the Klan and the far right and the neo-Nazis. Because the resurgence of the Klan happened from a movie. And it speaks to the power of film and the power of media. the resurgence of the Klan and where we stick now, and with the Klan, and the Klan becoming prominent, but the Klan had been wiped out. The Klan had been completely wiped out by, if I'm not mistaken, Ulysses S. Grant, and the Klan had become just like patches of people being ridiculous. But when Birth of a Nation premiered, Birth of a Nation was the first blockbuster, which was the first time in this country's history where a movie appeared that the majority of the populace watched. Birth of a Nation was responsible for the resurgence of the Klan. It portrayed the Klan as heroes to protect America from black people, from savage Negroes. And this movie was so relentlessly powerful that it was screened at the White House, and the president, I think it was Woodrow Wilson, called it a masterpiece. White supremacy has been ingrained in America's culture forever. It has been ingrained in the White House forever. This is not new. And Belafonte's lynching story, along with that highlight in it, really highlights that. And it's something people really need to pay attention to. Especially, quote unquote, liberals and white liberals who are just in shock that things are so bad right now. And, oh my God, what have we done? What have we come to? And we've never been like this before. No, you're full of shit. We've been like this for a while. You just didn't want to admit it. Trump is your new boogeyman, but man, the boogeyman's always been there. You just don't want to admit it. And Belafonte's performance, though small, is the most powerful performance in this movie. Hands down. So, that's the end of my review for this movie. Honestly, whether I would recommend going to see it or not, as a movie, remove it from the political context. As a movie, you can skip it. However, in the political context, and the importance of the message that it portrays, no matter how ham-fisted it gives it to you, the importance of the message it portrays, and the emotion that it evokes, that emotion is important. That message is important. And because of the political climate, and because we need to see and hear this, go see it. Not because of the movie. And I hate saying this, because this is a movie review talk. But don't see it because of the movie. See it because of the message. Because we need it. We need it. So that's my review of the movie. 7 out of 10. Possibly 7.5. If you want to see it just as a movie, wait for it. Wait for it to come out on Redbox or on demand or Netflix or whatever. But wholeheartedly, go see it. Go see it. And that's my review of BlacKKlansman. Stay tuned in the future for more movie reviews, and I hope you enjoy.